Okay, so yeah, Matt, I wanted to have you on so we could talk about um, a recent, what I witnessed, but a recent event that you competed at in NorCal for a CrossFit semifinal, and just witnessing you prepare for that, you and Scott, and then just witnessing you in the gym and the type of training you were doing to prepare, because knowing that the weather would be a little bit of a challenge for you, being that you're here in Calgary. And it reminded me of an email I'd sent you last year prior to you getting chopped in half by the judges for the 2024 semifinals. Um, but that being said, I still remember doing it with Lindsay, and I wasn't coaching the other two, Janie or Amy, so I don't know what they were doing. But Lindsay, I know I made Lindsay do it, a lot of the stuff, and it was very uncomfortable for a lot of times, which I'm sure you'll share. And just some of the, yeah, just for some of the benefit, right? And again, I think people would ask me, of like, well, like, like, what, like, why would you ask them to do this? Like, what are they getting out of it? I was like, well, they're getting like a couple percentage points. And I was like, that's the same reason you train your snatch all year, is so you can maybe get 5 pounds up on it or be able to hit a certain weight guaranteed. You did it all year. You put all this effort into one lift. You can't put 3 weeks into this to prepare for the actual event you're competing in.
Yeah.
That seems a bit like crazy to me. Um, anyway, yeah. So we're talking about heat training with Matt Brady. So where do you want to start? Let's just start with, yeah. Where do you want to start with it?
I will just maybe just start with kind of my background on it. Heat has always been like kind of kryptonite to me. Other athletes I've talked to don't have the kind of same negative effects that heat does, I find to myself. So I remember I was training in Toronto like 4 or 5 years ago, and it's quite humid out there, and there was a 40-degree day. And I'm not one to quit workouts. I've never really quit a workout, and that day I had to, because the heat was just it just got me, and it totally fried me, and to the point where bodily functions weren't functioning the way they should. So yeah, so I was nervous going into NorCal that that was going to be a main concern with the majority of events being outside, and the forecast for the weekend was looking like 38 to 40 degrees Celsius. So
Yeah.
quite hot. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So the event, like, well, let's don't worry about the actual date of the event, but at what time out from the event would you say you purposefully started preparing specifically with the heat in mind? How many weeks out from the event?
It was uh it was 2 weeks, yeah, 15 days out from
Mm.
the event. So I didn't have a lot of time to prepare.
Oh yeah,
And
because you got a invite, right?
yeah, I was
Yeah.
invited. So basically as soon as I got my invite, the heat training started. Yeah.
And why did you think to do that? Was it like instant? You're going, okay, well, it's hot there. Like I've experienced this in the past. I got to get this going.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just knew it was going to be outside in the direct sunlight. Um, Based on what I've seen from NorCal before, I don't think they were going to do anything to make it more enjoyable for the athletes in the
Hmm.
heat. And yeah, as I mentioned before, heat has kind of been my kryptonite. So I knew I had to prepare if I wanted any level of performance at the event. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know for myself. I didn't know how hard performing like CrossFit in the heat was until the 2010 games when it was in Carson and they had the Pyramid Helen event that I was doing. And so it ended up being like 3 rounds of Helen, or so like 6 rounds, which is basically running kettlebell swings and pull-ups. So like I remember towards the end of the event, I was doing sets of three on kettlebell swings because I
Wow.
was
Yeah.
basically, and I wasn't even gassed. I was like, I can't go, I can't move. I just
Yeah.
can't go. There's
Yeah.
nothing. I'm just here. Um, and it was so like, it was just such a shocking thing. And I remember watching like guys like Rich Froning run around, and he's just like, it's not phasing him, and he's looking great. And Like, what the hell? I'm like, oh yeah, well, I mean, I live in Calgary. Like 30 degrees in Calgary is not 38 degrees in LA. With
Yeah.
humidity, it is not. Um,
Yeah.
and I learned that the hard way, which was good. It was good learning. And
Yeah, and
then,
I saw that like walking out. I remember walking out at NorCal to Heavy Isabel. We were the second heat, and the way the venue was set up, you had to walk by the competition floor, and the
mm,
check-in was on the other side. And so I remember walking and watching. There was guys that were on one knee in between reps, and I was like, "Oh man, what am I getting myself into here?" Like, because it was cooking. It was super hot,
yeah,
right in the sunlight, and it was kind of like you clear your throat a little bit walking out to that. So
yeah, you're not gassed during that event, right? You're not gassed. Like, so
yeah,
you're going, if this guy's on one knee, it's because he is so fatigued.
yeah,
And it's probably just the culmination of the event plus the heat.
yeah,
It's like, why else? Like, if this was indoors, he wouldn't be on one knee,
yeah.
right? It wouldn't be happening. Okay, so again, you get the invite. You have 15 days to go. What are you doing and why are you doing it?
Yeah, so instantly, the first thing was just to all my, and this came from Scott, but just all my training was going to be in a sweatsuit. So,
Hmm.
um, sweatshirt and sweatpants, and right from kind of warm up all the way till the end of my last Metcon or whatever that looked like was just going to be in quite heavy clothing. And that came from your direction, I believe, from some information you'd given us prior to
Yeah, for last year's
for
semifinals,
last year's
2024.
semifinal. Yeah, exactly. So that was number one. And that was hard. It was quite hard to train like that. And obviously your perceived effort is way higher. Um,
And like your perceived effort is hard because of the heat, but the discomfort factor is
yeah,
what people are not ready for.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, very uncomfortable and just like not able to hold paces the way you normally would, right? Especially on longer, like I found it. And Scott was writing really good design, I think, here, but he'd have me do like 5 minute workout, 10 minute, 15 minute AMRAPs kind of back to back to back. And
Mhm.
by the time I'd get to like a 15 minute, it was just very hard to hold a pace that I normally would hold,
Mhm.
and would expect myself to hold. And yeah, I think we talked about this, but it was like you don't know why you're going slower almost like in your brain, but you just have to go slower. And yeah, that's like the best way I can describe it. So
Yeah, well, perception of effort functions as a factor of projecting forward a lot with athletics, and that you're measuring, you're assessing, and it doesn't mean you're putting a numerical value on it, but you're assessing what your current state or your current ability to hold this current pace is, and you're projecting it forward, going, can I continue at this rate, and can I continue making my way through the event at this rate? And what is going to happen to my perception of effort? Like, where is it going to go? Am I going to hit a 10 out of 10? And you're saying you're on a 15-minute like piece and you're going, am I going to hit that at 5 minutes in? Like, what you're going to do is you're going to slow it down, right? Because
yeah,
you want that RPE to rise more slowly. You're like,
right,
it can't go to 10 right now. It just cannot.
right,
Um, and the heat makes it go up artificially fast. And so then you have to manage that by going like like way slower than you normally would. But like, and I mentioned to you one time when you were doing it, is that it requires maturity for you to do it, to do the training, and then to go, yes, I know I'm doing this, and I seem like I'm performing like crap right now because I'm going slow, but I have to do this, and I have to know that like when I go and compete, I'll do way better than this. Like I'll go way faster than this. And just to kind of go, this is just part of the training. I just have to do this. I have to do this. And like me rowing this slow at this point in the event is not who I am. I know I'll be better come game day. But
yeah,
you almost have to silo that off and go, this is not me. I'm not going to be like this.
yeah, yeah. I think it was tough in particular for me too because I was just coming off an event as well, so it was probably some fatigue from that.
Hmm.
So doing that plus the sweatsuit, it was like everything felt insanely hard. But it paid off for sure. And yeah, so anyways, back to the kind of what I was doing.
Yep.
So after each PM session, I would go and sit in a steam room
Yep.
um, for about 15 minutes. Uh,
After
and
each session.
after each session, yeah, and I would I
And where was this with these sessions? At home?
but no, my session would be at the gym.
And then you go home quickly.
and then I drive to steam room, which is about, yeah, 10 minutes from our gym.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
then I mentioned before, before we got on, but I would use my watch as a guide. So I think the information you'd given us showed that we had to get uh, our body temperature up to, 38, 39 degrees, I think was the ideal metric, which um, I would actually achieve that in my training too. So I would
Hmm.
actually hit those temperatures just in the sweatsuit. But then for added effect, I would, yeah, go sit in a steam room to, it was kind of a double purpose, but for the heat training for sure, just to get really hot and get used to being hot. And I would wait till I'd get to about 40 degrees in there, uh, which was usually about 12 to 15 minutes. But the steam room was also a way for me to, I was dealing with a cold too. So it was a good way for me to clear that out.
Yeah, the research generally would suggest, right? The goal is to get core temperature up, which you can approximate in a different way through skin temperature. But it's not just how you get it up; it just has to be up for an extended period of time. So you can do heat training, in a sauna. Um, but it is to me, it's better to combine part of the sport and go like, I'm going to do this, and this is, this is worse than what it's going to feel like. But this is the quickest way for you to raise your body temperature is to exercise because that generates a ton of heat, right? And that's why training in the heat or competing in the heat is so hard, is because then your body has to get better at getting rid of that heat. And the way it does that is with sweating, right? And getting the heat from the core of the body to the periphery, and that being via water and being sweat. But the problem with that, right, in terms of the challenge for the athletes, and if people don't know this, the reason that training in the heat or competing in the heat is so hard is because a significant fraction of that blood, that oxygenated blood that would be going to your muscles to produce power, is now going to your skin to get rid of heat. So when you're competing in a competition like CrossFit, your cardiac output is effectively almost maxed out in many events, in many circumstances. So if you, let's just say like a 2K row, if you're rowing a 2K and, you're you're holding let's just pick a random pace. You're holding like 140 per 500 meters. And by the end of the event, you are absolutely crushed, right? And you're just doing this, in your house, right? Or some air conditioned area or something that's not too hot. You like that's basically your max potential. So if you just like take 5% of your cardiac output and then have to send it to your skin to get rid of heat, you're going to go slow. You're going to row slower. It's what's going to happen. You're going to notice that you're going to fall off your pace a little earlier, or you're just going to feel like that was way harder than before. Because your body has less oxygen to utilize because some of that blood has to go to the skin to get rid of the heat. That's why it's such a challenge. And so what the heat training is really doing is helping your body improve that process of getting heat out of the body a lot faster and reducing the point in which you're going to sweat. So you'll just start sweating earlier, which is what you want because you want to you're trying to resist getting hotter.
Yeah.
And if you don't train it, your mechanisms for that aren't there, and you will suffer great consequences. But if you're doing what you're doing or what you did, right, it does have and you can't say like that's the challenge with it is because Matt, you can't say, well, I did way better because I did this because you didn't go there and also have the condition where Matt didn't do any of this and just went and did
Mhm.
it. But I guess like how would you kind of explain your perception of performing in that type of scenario on day one versus on your last day of training prior to the event?
Yeah.
Or the last time you were doing specific heat-based training.
Yeah. I definitely felt I I'll just say like I felt that the competition environment was actually a lot easier than what I was doing in
It
training.
is. It is.
Um, because once I think even wearing a sweatsuit, the thing about that is it's insulated too, so the heat doesn't really get out. So as soon
Hmm.
as I was in a t-shirt and shorts, and there was a little bit of a breeze, it felt amazing. Like it actually
Hmm.
felt so good, which
Yeah.
is kind of what you want for a competition weekend, right?
Yeah.
So, um,
Um, yeah. So continue on that line about how you think, like how you perceived it to have helped you in terms of
Yeah.
like again start how it felt starting out and then how it felt over time as you kind of got used to that perception of heat.
Yeah, it just felt like normal conditions for me, which is good, right? Because I don't think it would have felt like that otherwise. I did actually go down to the Sacramento area 5 days prior to the event so I could train in the heat there because I was obviously worried about things like humidity and just like the direct sunlight and things that might not be the same in Calgary.
Yeah.
So I think that was really helpful. And then yeah, performance wise, I just felt like it felt like I was working out in, an air conditioned room all weekend with the exception of the last event, and I can go into some detail on why that felt so hard. And that was the only event the heat really got to me on. But other than that, it wasn't really a factor. And I remember, I was there and my wife who was helping me throughout the weekend was like, I can't believe you're working out in this. Like it's so hot. And for me, I was like, oh, this honestly, it didn't feel bad. So
hmm
that's when I knew the kind of the sweatsuit training really worked. So.
Yeah, so again, let's just go through some of your strategies, right? So one, which was I think was the first, it's like I think it was one of the recommendations I'd written in that email is like basically the easiest option is to basically just wear too much clothing in training,
Mhm.
right? And so like wearing a sweatsuit or wearing basically like wearing a long t-shirt or long sweatshirt or long sleeve shirt plus pants, just that alone is a great step. Um, in doing the training you're doing. So then like on like when you're actually at the event, actually sorry, and then other things you said you did here was a steam room or a sauna. But then when you're at the event, what are some of the things you're doing to mitigate the heat? Because
Mhm.
then the other side of it is you're heat trained when you go down, which is what you want. But then you also want to implement cooling strategies while you're there, because that is also part of improving performance is cooling strategies. So what did you do there?
Yeah. So I use a lot of ice, obviously. Like, so basically what I would do is I would warm up. I should start with what I was wearing. So, I would wear light clothing, so
Mhm.
light t-shirts, breathable t-shirts,
Yeah.
usually a light hat to reflect the sun, and then yeah, light shorts when I could as well. So that, I think that made a difference. Some events I would just take my shirt off too,
Yeah.
to just, reduce that temperature even a little bit more. But I basically warm up and then right after my warm up, we'd have a 10-15 minute window where we're corralled before we go out. And I would just pretty much shower myself with ice. So pour cold water down my neck. I bought an ice vest off
I
Amazon.
saw
So
that in the picture. That's
um,
great.
yeah, so I'd wear an ice vest and which actually worked super well. And people are like, "Oh, are you going out with a weight vest?" And no, no, it's an ice vest, and I'm gonna take it off. But that worked really well. Just holding an ice pack on your neck and those sort of things, getting in shade. There wasn't much shade at the venue, like even in the
hmm
warm up area, there was no shade, so that was quite tough. But yeah, just a lot of little things like that I think made a difference. So
Yeah, and I think most semifinal events aren't actually going to be like that one, like you're doing. That is a bit of a rarity. But I think for competitors or anyone that's competing, and and knows they're going to be doing an event and it's going to be outside and potentially can be very hot. Like everything you're saying here is they need to be jotting this stuff down and going, okay, I got to do this, I got to do this. And they should just message you about like, well, what did you do here? I'm sure you would tell them. Um, because this is just like invaluable information because and like I was saying to you the whole time while you were doing it is that this is the boring stuff that some people don't do. They won't do it because it's annoying. Um,
yeah,
but again, you train all year and you train, you have such and you put so much into it, you would go, well, I mean, this is where your competition is. This is how it's going to be. You like preparing for like training is meant to prepare you for whatever you're trying to do. And if your goal is to compete or make it to the highest possible in your sport, and then your sport has this one context that requires you to compete in it, and you just go, oh, I'm not going to prepare for that context, you would go, what? Why aren't you doing
yeah.
that? I thought you wanted to do this. And so that's why I appreciate that so much about you, Matt, is that you're like, I got to do this, so I'm doing it, man. I'm not going down there and going, man, I wish I'd done more heat training, or I'll be fine, like that type of thing, right? And just like, just justify it after the case. But you went, no, I'm going to do it and I'm going to give it my absolute best shot. And then I will be satisfied with it because I'll know I did what I could have done, right?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I wish, I had a little bit more time even to
Of
to
course.
prepare for it.
Yeah.
But
And the
I
way the
th
research goes with that, Matt, is usually the longer time you spend doing it, the longer lasting the effects.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I do remember Scott had programmed me to do Nate kind of the Saturday before I left for
Yeah.
California, which I thought was a bold strategy to make me test that because it could go either way, right? I could
Yeah.
get a really bad score and that could crush my confidence a week out from the
Yeah.
competition. But I PR'd my Nate and it wasn't a great score, but given that I was in a full sweatsuit and it was I think even 30 degrees in Calgary that day that I did it. So
Hmm.
um, you know, that gave me a lot of confidence, like, okay, we're ready, like we're prepared. I've acclimated to the heat and so that was a really nice kind of check mark heading into the competition.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like anecdotally for myself here, just even running in Calgary, like the first part of the weeks when in the summer when it starts getting really hot, like I preferentially run at those times. Like I'll run in the afternoon specifically because it's really hot. Because I know there's gonna be times in the summer where it is a bit warmer than normal. And so if I want to be able to get good training in, I have to almost prepare for the training I want to do.
Yeah,
It's like if I want to be able to do this training, which I'm going to have to do it at some point where it's hot. Like if I just always run in the morning or really early and avoid all that, then I'm basically I'm basically like constraining myself to a very small portion of the day that I can even do training. Um,
yeah,
but then otherwise, but the other part of it is too, like training in the heat also has added benefits besides just competing in hot temperatures. Um, like I was actually just talking to someone last week in my office about this person has got to do a really high altitude trek for like they're going on a trip in January. And I think it's like a 2 week thing, but they're basically going to spend most of the 2 weeks at 15,000 feet or up. Right. And then some of the peaks are 20,000 feet. Um, and I was like, well, the one thing you could do here is you can do heat training. Because heat training will have some carryover to helping you at elevation. And I remember, and I was, again, I just finished reading a research paper on it. And it's funny enough, she showed up the next day. And so I sent her the paper and then she was reading, I guess she probably read it, but she's like, oh, this is really helpful. Which is it's again it's such a simple thing to go, okay, like 4 weeks before you go on your trip, you should start doing this like 3 times a week, probably because she's basically retired. So I'm like, well, just go to the YMCA in your local area and just sit in the sauna for an hour. Um, and the way you explain it to her is like, you don't really have access to altitude, so to speak. You can do a little bit of it, but not really. Like we don't have anything around here that's close to 15,000 feet. I was like, so your investment is going to have to be heat training. You're going to have to do this to try to help yourself because I mean, you're paying for this trip that's going to be 2 weeks and it's in South America. Do you really want to go there and just wing it and just hope that you're good to go? Because I mean, like when you're going back there, you're never going back. So I mean, like, do it right.
yeah,
Again, it's super practical. And I remember one of the slogans was like, heat training is poor man altitude training
yeah,
because it,
yeah.
it, it has lots of carryover effects, but you don't got to go anywhere. You just got to put in the work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. Mike, could you talk about, you sent me a video like 2 days before the event about the effect on performance by reducing your body temperature by even half a degree. Um,
Oh, I can't remember exactly what the video was, but the basic premise, I think it was like pre-cooling strategies, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And so it was a good illustration of the point of one, like heat training will help your body reduce the rate at which you store heat. It'll help you reduce the rate at which you get hotter, right? Because you're not going to not get hotter because you did heat training. but you're going to get a lot better at slowing the increase of getting hotter. That's what it's doing. And so it's really simple. It's like, so, okay, so the goal of heat training is to reduce the rate at which you get hotter so you can extend your performance or give a better performance. Pre-cooling just is exactly what it sounds like. You just, okay, so if the goal is to reduce the rate at which you accumulate heat, well, let's just start your body temperature with just a little cooler, right?
Yeah.
And then when they have those two conditions, right, they basically I believe the study was basically they had like two or three conditions for the cyclists to do a time trial on, and it was probably like a 15, 20 or 30 minute time trial on a bike, and they just put them in different temperature conditions in these temperature controlled rooms. And yeah, and the group and like as the temperature went up, the effect of pre-cooling got more and more significant. So like when it was in 15 degrees, it's like pre-cooling didn't have that much of a difference, I don't think. But as it got up to like a 40-degree room, yeah, pre-cooling had a huge difference on in terms of like the finishing time of the athletes. And you could do that condition, you could do that exact study and just have people who were heat acclimated, and you'd get almost the same results without doing like pre-cooling. People who are acclimated to heat, the hotter the temperature out is, the more difference you're going to see in people who are ready for the heat. But what you want to do is both. Like do heat
Yeah.
acclimation training and do pre-cooling strategies. But like which is a good question for you, right? Like did you do any of that here, the pre-cooling strategy stuff? Because you
Mm.
usually wouldn't recommend doing stuff in competition that you've never done in
Right.
training, because it's hard to know where you're like, oh, I don't want to get too cold, or you don't want to make the person too cold.
Yeah.
So I guess how did you find that balance for what worked for you?
Yeah, I definitely didn't do it in training because my goal with training was to make
Yeah,
it as hard
yeah,
as possible,
yeah,
so that it would feel better on game day.
yeah.
So yeah, I only did it on game day. Um, yeah, and I mean that had a big influence on me because I would basically just take a case of water, put it in the freezer, and then every day I would just bring a couple bottles with me to the venue, and then as those melted, I would pour the frozen water on my upper neck and back. And even the
Hmm.
last event, I just dumped it on my head. We had a running event where I grabbed my water as I was heading out for the run after a row and just poured the ice cold water all over me. So just little things like that to try and keep the body temperature down. So it's really hard to do though. Like it's, when it's that hot, your ice packs melt in 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's hard to employ in a situation like that. I wasn't doing any like ice baths right before the event or anything. There was no facilities available like that. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, and I think that's why I think some people won't do it is because it requires planning, um, and you have to organize yourself and get it done, and so that's why I think some people would skip it is because it requires that part.
Yeah.
Did you see anybody else doing those types of things?
There were a few other athletes that were doing those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I think by the last day there were quite a few athletes. I think people kind of picked up that they need to do those kind of pre-cooling strategies.
Hmm.
So yeah, you could tell the athletes that were dialed in and that were there to compete were trying to use those strategies. So
Yeah.
I did have a question for you on
Sure.
maybe something I could have done better, because as I mentioned before, the only time I really felt the heat was on the very last event, and just to kind of give people context, it was uh, it was 39 degrees out that day. I didn't want to know the temperature because I just didn't want to tie any kind of negative or positive
Yeah.
mindset towards it. So I actually went and looked it up after, but it was really hot and it was quite humid actually on the last day, which it hadn't been the previous 2 days. But basically what happened is I had to warm up for an event. It was a heavy lifting event. So it takes a while to, warm up your lifts. And then I went to check in and they said, oh, there's a 30-minute delay. So then at that point, I was already hot, ready to go, and then had to cool down and then basically warm up those lifts again. And by the time I got to the start mat, I was just really hot. And I remember I was almost like kind of panicking going into that event because I was so hot I couldn't cool down. There was no shade or anything like that. All my ice packs and stuff had been used, and I just found it really tough to cool down. And unfortunately, I think the heat kind of got me on that last one. So yeah, anything you would recommend in that situation to maybe do differently?
Yeah, just have the event run on time. That's probably the only recommendation. But I mean, everyone in your heat had to deal with it.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, no, that would be like yeah, you would want like you would basically want to have a building you could go in or like a shaded area you could sit in, but you don't have it, right? Um, yeah, like like I said, like the only real thing you could have done differently for your preparation would be find out a month and a half earlier.
yeah,
Right? And then by the time you got there, you could have already played with like cooling strategies ahead of time before tests. Like you could have did like a pre-cooling thing before doing like maybe it was a hot day in Calgary, you do like a pre-cool before you do like an outdoor running thruster event or something. And you're like, how did that go? Was I too cold before I started? Or you do like an ice bath and then you go do something at home like an erg test in the sun. You go like, I was actually too cold before I started, so I can't do that. Like you would go, I can't get into an ice bath. That was too much because it like
right.
kind of shocked me and I got too cold. Because being too cold is not good either, because then you're gonna actually you're physically gonna start shaking to try to warm yourself up. So yeah, there's nothing you could have done in there. It would just be having more time to figure that stuff out. But like having done it now, the real benefit is having gone through this and having done it, you'll have a pretty good idea of how to approach this next time if this context comes up again, right? And that's really what being like, well, you said dialed in as an athlete, but that's what it means. Like that's what it means is that like being dialed in is the athlete setting themselves up in a way that they can actually give their true best on game day. It doesn't mean they're going to win, but it just means that whatever you did to get there on game day, that it allowed you to give your actual best,
Yeah,
um, versus going there and giving sort of your best,
yeah,
right? Because then you look back at it and you can just be content with it and go, I did what I could. That was it. Like I had 15 days and I made the most of it.
yeah,
And if you only had 7 days, it would still be beneficial, um,
yeah,
to do that because some research is as short as 1 week, um, and showing a benefit for like a 1 day event. And again, people would scoff at it and you go like, I mean, do you want the points or not? Like
yeah, yeah,
that's it.
yeah,
And like I don't know, and this would be just pure guessing for yourself, but do you think it actually helped you finish higher
yeah, for sure.
in
Yeah,
certain events where you're
100%.
like, oh, this is like the running one I'm thinking of probably mostly the row run one?
Yeah, definitely the row run one. There was a
Being on the rower in the sun is brutal.
Yeah, that one was earlier in the morning. It was about
Oh, okay.
9:30, so it
Oh,
wasn't
lucky.
too
Yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
There was a reverse wall ball, bike erg, bar muscle up one. That one was really hot, and I think that event in particular, I could see guys really fading because it was about a 12, 13 minute event. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it 100% helped me.
And for me, what it always played out is like I didn't have any muscular endurance, is what it seemed
Mhm.
like.
Yeah,
When I would get too hot, it would be like I'm doing a set of 15 toes to bar and I'm wanting to break at 5 reps.
yeah,
And I was like, what? Like I'm not even tired. How am I coming off the bar so early? And then the breaks you do take get extended. They get like really long,
yeah,
because your RPE is not coming down as quickly as when you're in the gym and you take a break. Like you take a break, the RPE goes down a bit, your breathing gets under control. But in the heat, with your body so high and you having a constrained cardiac output, like your respiration rate doesn't go down at the rate you would want it to or expect it to. And then your rate of RPE doesn't go down as fast during that break as you would expect it to.
yeah.
And yeah, and that's why competing in the heat is just such a challenge. It really is such a
Yeah.
challenge.
And I think we're at a disadvantage in Calgary or Canada
Hmm.
that time of year because the competitors in most of these events seem to be in the south of the US. And so a
Hmm.
lot of those people that live down there are training in this if not all year round, they have a probably a window where it's hot from
Yeah.
maybe March
Yeah.
to the event. Whereas us, like I remember 2 weeks before the event, it was 16 degrees in Calgary, and the week of the event, and this is good reason I went down to the States. It was again like 15, 16 degrees in Calgary.
Hmm.
So I think if you're a Canadian athlete in the semifinal season you have to do the heat training if it's going to be an outdoor hot event. So yeah.
Yeah. And for that example, like I had another a masters athlete that competed there in 45 49. She ended up winning, but she lives in Georgia. So I didn't even mention
Mhm.
this to her.
Yeah.
Because she's frequently like I'll talk to her on Zoom and I'm like, oh, it looks really hot.
Yeah.
And she'd be like, it would be hot. And she has an outdoor rig, and so she trains on that. And so she's kind of used to it. Like
Yeah.
she's kind of acclimated to this. She's used to this. She's used to being in the heat. Whereas before she lived in Quebec, and so if she was going from Quebec to California, we'd have to do this. But I think most cases with someone like her, it's more so just do the training and just, go about it normally, and you'll probably be fine.
Yeah. I think too, one of the benefits or something I focused on too was actually training in the direct sunlight because when you're in the direct sunlight, it's got to be, a few degrees hotter. And so, you can work out in the heat and be in your gym and, it's probably 5 degrees lower than it is if you're directly in the sunlight.
Hmm.
And so when I was down in Sacramento the 4 or 5 days before the event, I did all of my sessions on a hot turf in the direct sunlight. And the gym owner thought I was absolutely crazy. But yeah, I think that exposure in the direct sunlight, if that's how the event's going to be, you need to train in that too, because it's almost
Hmm.
like a piercing heat. I don't know how to describe it, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And for people who don't do this or have never done this type of have never had this scenario of like doing something in the heat, I would just just for one time just take a barbell outside and what Matt's saying on if it seems like it's a hot day in your area and just do like a 20-minute AMRAP with thrusters, burpees and like kettlebell swings and just let us know how it goes. And it will be an experience. You will just go like you will quickly realize what it means to get hot and how much of a negative impact that has on your performance. It's funny because again I just laugh because I'm running around here in Calgary and I remember I was in Scottsdale and earlier in May to visit my brother and his family and I was just doing easy runs outside and it's like literally 38, 39 degrees outside and I just flown down from Calgary so I wasn't used to that. But even over the course of the 1 week being there, I noticed I was getting better at it. But even at like 25 minutes, just running easy for 25 minutes, I was like, I don't know if I could even run this pace for another 30 minutes. I don't know if I could keep this up for an hour, running
Yeah.
my quote unquote zone two pace here in Calgary. But then I come back to Calgary and it's like a little bit warmer. And I'm like, I feel like I'm already used to this now.
Yeah.
Um, which is again to my point earlier is that it's such a benefit to be able to just do your training to get the training that you want to get done without having to worry about these external factors, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, anyway, yeah, that's great. That was this will be helpful for some competitors that are interested in or that are going to be competing in these environments and just good to listen to you talk about how how you did it. Um, obviously the things you took into account and that it is worth the time investment.
Yeah, big time worth it. If you want to be competitive and punch a ticket to the games, you gotta prepare for that. So thanks for all your help in getting me ready for that, Mike.
Yeah, dude, don't worry. Like I said, it was a pleasure to watch you do it. I just love people who are so committed to it and just will do all the little things they need to do. Um, and not just and like just not give away points. That's what I love. You're like, no, if I'm gonna not make it, then you're gonna have to beat me because I'm gonna try. I'm gonna do everything I can. And like I said, to truly show up and to truly be able to give your best is just, yeah, it's something you can be proud of. Because it wasn't easy, right? You could
Yeah,
easily just cop out and go like, yeah, whatever, I'm just gonna go do my best. And then you get there and it's funny to play the scenario in your head of what would it be like, but you're like, man, if I was breaking down on the last day and I'd done all this, like
Yeah.
how, like
Yeah.
what would have been like on that last event if I didn't do anything?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, do you think you're
Exactly.
even coming close to cleaning the last bar? You're like, dude, you'll be so zapped.
Yeah. No,
Um,
not even close.
yeah. Yeah, so it was awesome. It was great to see you do it. And so anyway, good learning for you, and thanks for taking the time to explain to anyone who's interested.
Yeah, anytime.